Hi everyone, this is Richard. In this video we're going to go back to classes and talk about static members. I had to take a little detour and talk about other things other than classes, and I felt that in my perspective, going through those other issues first would clarify classes as we expand upon that in the future. Okay, so if it seems like I'm jumping around, I'm sorry about that. I think this is the best way to explain it. Okay? So when we talked about, we created a class, okay, and when we talked about declaring variables, we called these members, right? And we called these instance members, or in this case, instance variables, right? Now we're going to talk about static members. What's the difference? When we remember classes, we talk about a class is like a recipe, right? It's a recipe, and that you have to create an object from that recipe. So we'll create an object. We'll say cake, is the type, and then my cake equals new cake. All right. So I actually create the object called my cake. So it's an instance of the class, or it's an instance object, or something of that name. Okay. So I'm creating an instance object called my cake, and I can manipulate the variables here and say my cake dot eggs equal duck. Okay, and then print my cake dot mix. Okay, so we'll activate this. It will return the type of eggs, type of water, type of flour, and type of artificial flavorings. So what does that give us? Duck eggs, fresh water, white flour, and no artificial flavorings. If we comment this section out right here, it will go to the default chicken. I would rather use chicken eggs right here, okay? And it has all of those. So we have these instance variables because we can change them through our object, through our instance object. So we have an instance object, and we change some of these values right inside of here, okay? The static objects we cannot manipulate through our object. We have to do it strictly through the class itself. So if we try to do my cake dot, and we look for artificial flavorings, we don't see that right here, right? Because you can't manipulate through there. You have to go through the class cake dot artificial flavorings equals a lot. Okay? And then you print it, and then it starts having duck eggs, fresh water, a lot of artificial flavorings. So you manipulate it through, so that's static access. This is instance access. Access it through the class in and of itself. Okay? And if you want to access through here, you could say cake dot, there's only one choice because there's only one static, which is the static variable. And that gets you a lot. It just gives you the value right here, which you declared, you didn't initialize, you reassigned the value up here. Okay, so I hope that's clear. So wait a minute. Let's create an analogy. You have a cake, and you create an object. You have a recipe for the cake, and you create the actual cake. So you make an object in and of itself. Let's delete this all right here. All right, so you make an actual object. So then I make another cake, and I say it's your cake equals new cake. Okay? So now I say print my cake dot mix and print your cake dot mix. All right? So what we have is pretty much the same stuff, right? How about if I want, for example, my cake dot eggs to equal, I like dinosaur eggs, and you like whatever, chicken eggs. So I have dinosaur eggs and you have chicken eggs. So I have my cake and I change my cake to have dinosaur eggs. But that doesn't change your cake, okay? Because my cake, I created an object and I can manipulate my object, but just because I manipulate my object doesn't mean I'm going to manipulate your object. There's no reason for it to be, right? So I have a recipe, I create an object, my object is separate from your object, as long as we use instance variables, okay? What if, for example, I change cake.artificial flavorings equals a lot. Okay, so I created the objects, right? And then I retroactively, so I go back and I change the recipe. What's going to happen right here? It's going to have a lot of artificial flavorings on both of them. So it's not a perfect analogy. So I said you have a recipe, you create an object right here and right here. If you change the recipe, the objects automatically get changed. You just need to know this. This is just the behavior of it, that if you don't realize that, if you don't, then basically you're going to mess up a little bit here. If you change an instance variable, you're changing it only for your particular instance. If you change a static variable, you change it for everything. Okay, so let's see what we can do here. So I go right here and I say my cake dot flour equals wheat. All right, so I have an object right here. I change the instance variable right here to wheat. I create a new cake, your cake, with this recipe. What is your cake? What kind of flour is your cake going to have? White flour, okay? Because again, instance variable, these variables themselves, you're only changing it for your own object when you have instance access. So you have wheat flour, it prints your wheat flour cake, gross. And then I have your cake, well actually that's my cake, oh, sorry about that. I get the gross cake, but your cake at least, your cake gets the regular white flour because I did not change the object. I did not change your object, your cake, I only changed my cake. I hope that's clear, okay? So wait a minute. For every object you create, if you change the instance variable, it will be only different for your particular object, okay? If you change the static variable, it will change for everything, okay? So let's just say here, why would this be important? Let's clear this up a little bit. Let's just say I have water poison. So when would you use static? Let's just say, for example, you created your object, you created another object from this class, and you said chicken eggs, poison water, and you're like, oh, well, wait a minute, there's a problem right here. You might want to go back and change for all of your objects, remove the poison water. So I don't want to just remove the poison water from my cake, I want to remove it from your cake as well. So I just change that. I can go right here and say cake dot, nope, no, I'm sorry. Actually, I would have to change this as a static, unfortunately. String water poison. I would have to change that. Then I have to go back and say cake dot water equals fresh. So I just went ahead and changed the poison water into fresh water. And I will change it for all the objects, even though they were created ahead of time. It will retroactively, it will go back and change them. Even though you change the recipe, you change the objects that were created as a result. So it changes from poison water to fresh water. Okay, so that's the concept of static members themselves. It modifies members of a particular class so you can access it in a different way. And it's not probably very clear at this point in time, when do you use static and when do you use instance variables themselves. I think and we'll eventually get there, but I think it's going to take some time in practice itself. But I think it's one of those things that just with time we're going to learn, and as long as you understand the concepts right now, as you start to look at code and read code, I keep saying this over and over again, you'll start to understand the behavior of it, and I think that's the most important of all. So otherwise, if you didn't realize that this changes retroactively these created objects, you might be puzzled in terms of what's actually going on in the code, but I hope you can understand it now. Okay, so let's keep going on with a few more videos on classes as time goes by. Thank you.